Hey, good morning, good afternoon, neurofeedback moms. I am Miriam Bellamy, licensed marriage and family therapist, and this is my partner, Lorna Hecht, partner for these broadcasts, these discussions. We want to talk today about families. I think it's a pretty topic that's pretty close to all of our hearts and minds right now. With all of us being home together. And Lorna and I will talk today about what we're seeing with our clients and what they're experiencing in their families and their marriages, relationships with their kids, and so forth. And then maybe some ideas for opportunities or ways of thinking about, going forward. And this isn't going to end anytime soon, it doesn't seem. So hopefully this will be helpful. We welcome your questions. Please comment at any time. And when we have a little moment, I'll post them across. Unless you give StreamYard permission, your name won't be broadcast here. And we are just broadcasting in the group right now. And then most likely sharing across Facebook as it's a helpful and fruitful conversation. So thanks, Lorna, for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Coming from very wet San Diego.
But I'm high and dry and bunkered in my bunker, my apartment bunker.
Yeah, something nourishing about rain, I have to say, because in Colorado we live, it's desert plains where we live, and rain is a rare thing.
So, right, same thing here. Yes, that's true.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
We're desert too. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So keeping you indoors.
So this is top of mind for me. I guess I'd like to say this to start, sort of preceding any further conversation, is that this is definitely a time of increased tension for many families, being together more than usual, and economic stress for so many families, plus worries about more fragile members and all of that. So if there are problems in the home with safety, with substance abuse, anything like that, do reach out. Therapists are still working.
Yes, we are.
Therapy is an essential service. All the therapists are available, and don't hesitate to reach out. Certainly, if your safety is at risk, take those steps. So that comes first before any other part of our discussion.
Yeah, and I think I work primarily with couples, and there are couples who are, I guess I'd call high conflict couples, and they're definitely having a tough time. Actually, I did a live week or so ago about going global. The coronavirus has gone global, but you may have a choice in that. With the idea that, when we get into a conflict, we go global. We make it, either about our spouses, about ourselves, about our kids, about our futures, and taking a pause from that, I think, is very helpful for those couples. But that is one of the things I'm seeing. The high conflict couples are definitely having a hard time. And then also people, I don't know if you're seeing this, I'd be curious. There are some people who are sort of taking it as a little bit of a honeymoon that really is fortifying, that everybody's at home. It's still irritating, but there's something about it that's also fortifying. Have you seen anybody like that, Lorna?
I've actually seen more of that. And
have you? Okay.
Yes. And with the couples, in particular, I think that this time kind of harkens back to the early days of courtship, because, the early days of courtship, people block out the rest of the world. And so, then what happens, of course, is eventually you have to do your laundry and visit your mother and all that. So the world comes creeping back in, and perhaps that's when the tension starts. When that initial togetherness is disrupted, and the triangles are more active, and you have to parcel out your time. So I think that there is a lot of that. Now, it's been, is it 3 weeks?
I think so. Keep talking. Yeah. I want to check. Go ahead. I'm going to look at my calendar right now. Go ahead.
Something like that. But, 6 weeks from now, I don't know that it'll be the same story.
Yes. I've got
here. Well, I wonder if we could study indigenous prehistoric people who had to winter in caves together and see how they did.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole winter, not 3 or 4 weeks, right?
Right. Like the natives from Alaska and further north or something like that. What do their winters look like? How do they do? Do more people come out alive or dead from all that togetherness?
Yeah, I hear you. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
That being said, this is a time of opportunity. This doesn't have to be just survived. Our survival needs come first: food, clothing, shelter. But if one has those needs met, how even if it's a struggle, how can this time be put to use emotionally? And I think there are ways.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Yeah. What would you think about there?
Well, the first thing, it's always the first thing, is what a great opportunity to observe the family. Everybody is together for long periods of time. There's not the usual release valves. I'm finding this for myself, how often I take an emotional break by running to the store, by going to the mall, still taking walks and whatnot. But for the most part, it's dealing with the feelings that come up in the relationship system and watching how that works, watching how the triangles work. If you're a family with kids, how does the mother, father, child triangle work? And how does it vary? Mother, father, child, number one, mother, father, child, number two. And that's not just for married or traditional nuclear families. There's usually a triangle of adults and children, right? It might be one parent with a grandparent and the child. Who does the child go to? Does a parent complain to the child about the other parent? Do the parents tend to argue about how the child is being managed? All of that emotional process is so much more visible now in this. One could almost call it an experimental environment. Actually, this reminds me, this takes me back to when Murray Bowen, who was the first one to observe how families operate, the way he was able to do that was by hospitalizing entire families together in the living space in the hospital. So it would be a mother, father, and a child, or multiple children. In this case, he was using families with severely emotionally ill children. But then he learned that these patterns exist in all families in varying degrees. So it's the same idea that this enclosed space offers the opportunity for observation and learning.
An opportunity for us to do our own research.
Make a research project out of your own family. And what's the point of that? The point is to see what one is doing over and over again and getting the same results that aren't very satisfying.
So let's talk about an example, because I don't think, first of all, most people tend to think of it as observing the family, right? We're just in it. Yeah, I see that's happening. So what?
Right, exactly.
Talking about sort of trying to step back a little bit, trying to pause a little bit and notice the bouncing between people, not psychologically and analyzing anyone. I think that's
Correct.
a big difference from, how most of us think about that. Right. And maybe why some people could be suffering in their families right now is they are watching the family and they're evaluating everyone and everything.
I think what you mean, tell me if I have this right or not, is, he keeps doing that. That's because he's a selfish SOB.
That's
or
going
mom, or a mama's boy, or yes, this child of mine keeps doing this because that's my sensitive one.
Yeah.
Or it's her ADD.
You got it.
And so that actually halts the observational process. Got that figured out, diagnose that problem.
Yes. Right.
And puts one in a more helpless position.
Which in quarantine, very difficult.
Big quarantine. More difficult than it has to be. So what you and I are talking about is observing the facts of functioning. This child tends to, when upset with mother, walk over to father and complain to father about mother. Those are facts. That's not diagnosis. That's not labeling. And then when father hears from child, father goes to mother and says, "Why'd you upset Junior?" That would be factual and predictable and probably repeated over and over and over again, especially in a tense environment. And so can any one of those three people, and it won't be Junior, modify what they're doing?
Right. It won't be Junior. For sure.
It won't be Junior, although Junior can respond to difference in the parents. That will happen. That happens pretty quickly, actually. If the parents start handling themselves more thoughtfully, the child will respond, maybe with a little pushback in the beginning, but positively pretty quickly. But the point in saying it won't be Junior is don't push on Junior to change if one hasn't owned one's own part and take a responsibility for that. Don't expect the kid to do it if you don't do it. Yeah.
That would be something to observe too, is do we tend as moms to push our kids to do X, Y, and Z? You know, we're doing all this schoolwork at home. To what degree do you push Junior to keep up his homework so that dad doesn't get upset or grandma doesn't get upset or whatever? And that
something like that.
Your own piece in that. You know, I'm again thinking about these couples that are high conflict couples dealing with childcare, where they're both at home, mom and dad are both at home working from home, and they have, you know, a 4-year-old. And how do they balance the childcare? And just thinking about, okay, so moms observes that little Sally is very dependent on her, and anytime she tries to leave the room to exercise and get a moment to herself, Sally is freaking out with dad. So what would be useful for that mom there?
So first of all, I want to just say that of the many things I'm very grateful for in this quarantine, not being a parent of young children might be number 2 on my list. I do not envy these families.
I'm with you.
Lordy.
Yeah.
So, and I am working with, seeing clients online, and I am working with a couple mothers who have children who perhaps are old enough to be on their own for an hour, but they have not been programmed to be able to be on their own for an hour. And the mothers come, have their therapy session in the car. I've had a couple of people now meeting with me because the only way they can carve out some space is to get in the car. And I got to tell you, the reception's not very good. So it's not the most efficient strategy. But so if the child has been programmed to depend on mother goes to get some work done, and the child makes a fuss with dad, and one or both of them, because dad is a player in this triangle, one or both of them try to activate mother by bickering with each other, even yelling for mother. Children will often just go burst into the room where mother is, interrupt her work. What is mother's autopilot? See, this is such a great thing to observe. Would she think, "Ugh, they can't handle it. I've got to go in and fix it. Darn it, it's always me. He never does it, la, la, la." Or does she say, "I'm not going to respond to you right now, and you and dad need to work it out. I'm not going to respond to you, partner. You and Junior need to work it out." And that would be an example of modifying one's position in the triangle. But it could take a lot of self-control to do that.
Yeah, I think it's easy, and I think dads do it too, but moms, I see a lot, get themselves into that over-functioning position with this belief that, you know, the Achilles heel of the over-functioner is the belief that other people can't do it right or won't do it. And so the difficulty with that self-control of just, okay, let me hold on, let me observe, and here's an experiment. What if I did that? What if I didn't run out into the living room, leave my last 10 minutes of my time to myself because I hear him or her screaming, whether that's the child or the father.
Yeah, right.
What would happen if I did that? What would happen? What happens when I don't do that? And really just trying to pause enough to observe.
So, what you're saying about that Achilles heel, I think also the other aspect to the Achilles heel is there's something that's kind of, uh, people may not want to admit it, but I think universal in an over-functioning posture is a certain sense of inflation. I am the one who's needed here.
Mm.
I am the one. I mean, and then that goes with the resentment. I think of all these historical family dinners where the matriarch makes all the food and she's so proud of herself, and then she's like, "But no one ever helps me." This both and
Mm-hmm.
of liking that feeling of being large and in charge, but then resentment that others don't participate.
Yeah. I guess it's like, why am I smiling? It's like I'm smiling right now because of the relief you can feel when you just make yourself a little less important. Speaking as an overfunctioner.
If you can get used to it.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
can get used to it and enjoy the benefit of other.
You can. It feels
Can.
good. You gotta work at it, but you can. I'm sorry I interrupted. Go ahead.
No,
Laura.
it's okay. And there's gratification in watching others around you do better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on to other opportunities, many people are taking advantage of this already, is taking the time to connect with extended family.
Mm-hmm.
And not just parents and siblings, but moving it out to first cousins and second cousins, meeting through the internet or the phone or, oh my gosh, write letters. But what a wonderful opportunity to reach out and nurture that connection, learn more about what's going on in the other families. I've heard a lot about people having weekly family meetings on Zoom.
Yeah.
And while you're at it, going to the older members of the family and asking what does this remind them of? I'm quite a bit older than you, but there's no reference point for this in my lifetime. But my mother was a child in London in the Second World War during the Blitz. That's a reference point for her. And even a cousin of mine who's 92 and lives in Chicago, who I have connected with since this started, she's remembering rationing in Chicago during the war. She's remembering living under rationing through the war.
So what's it like to speak to your family members? What's the value in that for you as you sort of hear these historical references and so forth?
Well, I think it's very interesting. It helps to know that these times of adversity are part of being human, and not just survivable. I think they're in some ways transformative. Perhaps somebody who goes through something like the Blitz and comes through the other side is somehow stronger for it.
Okay.
I'm hearing a lot about maybe 18-year-olds now who can't go on their college tours. Their whole plans are disrupted and the parents feel terrible about that. And I kind of think, yay, this is coping with adversity as they're getting ready to launch. Still have some family support to help them. That's pretty neat. That might really translate into something valuable down the road. So learning about that. I also think that, again, in this nuclear family or living alone or just a couple, pressure cooker of stay indoors, putting energy into activating other triangles helps take the pressure off, the focus off the other. So that's a good, productive project that can help that laser-like focus on what's getting on your nerves about whoever you're living with.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I realized is that, and this would be another potential opportunity if a person has interest, and that is doing family history work, which you can do with living family members or hop on Ancestry and figure out, right? And one of the things that I realized, and this is, I've been doing that work for a good while. But one of the things I learned was that my grandmother on my mom's side had a little sister. I had never heard about her. She died at 4 years old, and she died in 1919. And I think she died in the flu epidemic. I think it was a swine flu epidemic in 1918 that had 3 waves. And I shared that with my mother, and she is not a woman who is speechless ever, and she was speechless.
What a wonderful discovery.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's possible for you to start to put together how that may have influenced the way that this was your great-grandmother?
Yeah, so it had been my grand aunt.
Who died. Your great-grandmother, how did that affect her childhood and her parenting?
Right.
I also, my father's paternal grandmother died in 1918 of the flu.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that specter rears its head, and that's been influential in the family process since then.
And what I think was so cool also, so my mom's initial response was she just didn't know what to say. And then what she did say was, and I could see a sadness in her, she wishes that she had her older family members around so she could ask them questions. Which, I don't know, it just, maybe that opens a little bit more of a door so I can ask her more questions.
Well, that's for sure. That's a different kind of interaction between you and your mother. Yeah. And that's super cool all by itself, but it also highlights to you the importance of ask those questions while you can.
Yeah.
Because you can't do it forever.
Yeah.
You can't do it forever. So
I think too, my father is 79 and he's in the high risk category. He's got hypertension and he's diabetic. And these are the folks who are in a much higher risk category. So, and he and I have already started having conversations about, what's he got, 5-6 years left, most likely. And what does that mean? And what do we talk about in that? We're just at the beginning of that. But that's a lot of therapists, you hear, I know you've heard, Lorna, these horror stories, right, of therapists encouraging their clients to go confront their parents for for what they did to them or what they still do to them and that kind of thing. Those conversations don't go well. I don't know if I've ever seen one go well. But this is a different kind of conversation. It's not, it's not going in to hold anybody accountable for anything. It's just getting to know them.
Well, how does one person hold another accountable? Unless you're a judge and you get to put them in jail. I don't. That's a concept I don't really get. But I'm all confused about the topic of forgiveness. So what do I know? I'm not that bright. But what do you do? You're bringing up a good point. What do you do about people grow up in homes where parents or the elders absolutely engage in a lot of really irresponsible behavior. Mm-hmm. And it's really natural to want that person to own it and apologize for it. That makes all the sense in the world. But one can't change the past. Mm-hmm. And so yes, again, there's more time now. If you want to move toward a problematic relationship, if one decides to, because of what it will build in self, because I can develop emotional muscles by interacting with this person who may or may not ever give me what I want.
Yeah.
Let's face it. Yeah. The relationship may never be particularly satisfying, but I may find there's something in it for me. Learning is one. Understanding how that person came to orient in the world the way he or she did, but also how can I not be controlled by that person or my fears of that person? How can I be more mature in the face of that person?
Mhm.
All of that. And in this slower time, one can strategize, even write down,
Mhm.
what do I want to do differently
Mhm.
when I call my difficult parent or sibling or whatever.
So I'm the time flew for me. I'm realizing we're coming to our end of the time here. And I would say too that, I think there's also a lot of messaging out there right now of, you can learn a new language while we're in quarantine, all this stuff that how you should be bettering yourself. I think what's so important about if a person did decide to reach out to extended family, that they do it because they really see value in it for themselves right now versus, oh, I should be doing this. I should, if I don't come out of quarantine being able to speak Mandarin, then, I've wasted my life or something. That's not where we're coming from at all. That this is, if it's interesting to you, if it sounds like something you want to explore, go for it, think about it.
Maybe with the help of a family system psychotherapist.
Yes.
That can be useful. And I will put in a bit of a plug for the neurofeedback because that can help settle down the nervous system enough to make moving in a different way possible. And it definitely, neurofeedback definitely helps that observational part of the brain.
Oh, huge. Yeah. The people who I'm renting units to right now who have them are very grateful that they have them.
I'll bet.
They really are. So
Worth every penny.
yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you, Lorna, for being here. Thanks for anybody who's been listening in. Feel free to, if you do have questions, throw them in the comments, and we'd love to interact with you that way. So until next time, you guys take care. Bye.
Stay
Bye.
well.
Take care.